Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Ichigo was in high school DxD part 5. Please like and subscribe for part 6. And the story belonged to Will the programmer, execution base Naruki City. Well, all seems to be going well besides the part where we have seen no sign of Ichigo since we put this plan in motion. Isn't this MMO to protect or whatever? We've gone as far as cutting down some his friends, and I've gone as far as to manipulate Orihime into believing Ichigo is her enemy and rewriting her history where I was in the place of Ichigo in all their shared events. Relax, Tsukishima, this is all going perfectly even if some unforeseen events happened like Ichigo not being in Karakura town. The fact that his friends have been getting hurt has bound to have gotten to him, and it's only a matter of time before he comes back. I'm also certain his said friends are working on a way to restore his powers. You do have that Inoue girl under your book of the end. Just use her to find out information because she is bound to know something about Ichigo, and if they discovered a way to get his powers back or seeing something like that would prompt her to tell you about it or steal it and bring to you, and if it's the later we don't need Ichigo and we can try to convince him to join our side and that the Soul Society is trying to control him. I think you just might be right, Ginjo. See, I come up with good ideas every now and then. I don't come across as that incompetent, do I? A silence and fake coughing could be heard in the room after he said that. Anyways, like I said, there's no need to worry. Time will constantly try to catch up with you. And with a roar, it will overcome you. Do not look ahead. Hope only lies within the unforeseeable current that will close in from behind. Karakura Town, Kazuki Candy Shop. Kazuki, I think something is off about Orihime. I might be just seeing things, but she never addresses Ichigo's name so formally and she just seems off. Kuchiki-san, I think you might be right. I believe Orihime has been compromised by the enemy, so let's keep an eye on her. Where is she anyway? She was in the room we were just in. As soon as Kazuki heard this, he took off to the room in a hurry, which prompted Rukia to follow him. As they got to the room, she was gone, and so was the sword to give Ichigo his powers back. Damn, this isn't good at all, especially if someone tries to use the sword on themselves that isn't Kurosaki-san. Kazuki, we got to find Orihime and the sword. Heading west, outskirts of Karakura town, said he would be staying in Naruki City, so I just have to head to his house and give this to him. We can't risk Ichigo getting his powers back to do bad things again. He was once our friend, and I don't know how he brainwashed everyone into helping him. Orihime finally got to her destination while suppressing Ryutsu to make sure no one could follow her. Orihime, what a pleasant surprise to see you here. Did something happen to bring you here this late at night? Yeah, Ichigo brainwashed everyone. They're trying to help him recover his powers, so I took this sword that they were using to give him his Soul Reaper powers back. As she was handing the sword over to Tsukishima, she had a gut feeling telling her it was a mistake and that Ichigo's wasn't bad and not to do it, but decided to hand over the sword anyways. We'll come inside, Inoue. We don't want you to get a cold now. I'll call up Chad and tell him to come over too so we can talk about our next plan of action to free them from Ichigo's manipulation. Tsukishima said this to reassure Orihime's confidence in him so she didn't start suspecting something was amiss. I can feel this sword has immense spiritual energy, but only when I'm in contact with it. I'm handing this off to Ginjo. It looks like for once his plans worked. It doesn't look like it, but he's a lot smarter than I give him credit for. Soul Society, listen up. I'm sending Squad 6 Captain Byakuya Kuchiki and Lieutenant Renji Abari along with Captain of Squad 10 and 11 Toshiro Hidasuke and Zaraki Kenpachi along with 3rd CD Kaku Madarame will head to the East Rukan district to confront the Ryoka. I finally get to cut something. I haven't had this much excitement in since Noitra. This proceeded to have a Kaku comment that this Ryoka, the 8th Kenpachi, was he really that strong? Either way, he's no match for my captain. This proceeded to spark a question in Naneo to her captain Shunsui. Why did the former captain of the 11 Division lead a revolt against the Soul Society anyways? In order to tell you that I got to go back to the beginning of when I first met him. Soul Society 250 years ago, somewhere in Rukongai, on a plain, somewhere in the outskirts of Rukongai, there's the sound of metal clashing. Shinigami are the protectors of spirits in the human world and Soul Society, but they are also hunters. Hunters who slice down hollows with their zanpakuto. These hunters are currently dancing around the battlefield, slicing down a group of hollows that appear in these outskirts. They belong to the 11th Division, the division most specialized in battle amongst the 13 divisions. They're smiling because they love to fight life-threatening battles, but also because they have absolute faith in their leader. This man seemed to radiate danger on another level. The height of the Ryutsu surrounding his body made the hollow's masks shake. the captain of the 11th Division, Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi. He was the 7th, Kenpachi, a name passed on to the strongest Shinigami. Kuroyoshiki fought the previous Kenpachi to the death in a duel. He has protected his title for several hundreds of years now. He was actually quite social and popular, even outside his own division. Several hours later, the battle is over and the 11th Division is having a drinking party. The 4th and 8th Divisions arrived to offer backup, but seeing as the battle was already over, they moved to leave again. However, Kuroyoshiki semi-forces them to join their party. The 11th Division members are impressed with their captain's strength. Only Captain Kuroyoshiki can take on a Manos like that. Kuroyoshiki tells them not to forget about Captain Yamamoto, or 12th Division Captain Hikifuna, or those from the Kuchiki and Shihuan clans. His members respond, but you never hear about anyone taking down a Vasto Lord like you did in the past, Captain. Also present because didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to have some fun, Kyoraka Shunsui was also present. Do you think you would have been able to take down a Vasto Lord, Captain Kyoraka? I have to say it depends on compatibility. I could win against Vasto Lord and lose against Jillian. In the right or wrong situation there's a lot to factor in. You never know. Is it alright for us to be drinking like this? Yamamoto might yell at you again if you don't report back on time. And what will Captain Unohana say if you get her soldiers drunk? This proceeds to make Kuroyoshiki agree that Unohana is scarier than any Manos when she's angry. They discuss what happened earlier. It's strange for several hollows to appear, plus a Jillian, a Juches and maybe even a Vasto Lord. Are the hollows starting to use battle formations and organize themselves? Kuroyoshiki thinks they might in the future, but not yet. Although he does remember the Vasto Lord, which he had defeated in the past, yelling, Baragan-sama, before he cleansed it. A hollow general, ha. I'd like to fight it someday, but Kano Ashita might kill it before him. Ashita disappeared into Hawako Mundo a few years ago with a few subordinates, chasing a hollow. The way Kuroyoshiki and Kyoraka spoke about him made it clear they thought he's still alive. Which made Captain Kuroyoshiki say that, even if the hollows will continue to evolve, the Gote 13 will improve as well. In 200-300 years, all captains and even vice-captains may be able to take on Vasto Lord. Kyoraka jokes that they may have to retire then. I might already be dead by then. But that's no problem, the 11th Division will always be led by a Kenpachi. One of his members quietly asks him if it's true that the 0 Division invited him. It's true, but I refused the offer. I'm not suited to protecting a king, hiding away in a different dimension until the enemy manages to get in. And it's not like I was officially ordered to join by Central 46 either. Furthermore, as Kenpachi, I have to wait here until someone manages to surpass me. Excuse me, can I have a second of your time? A young man uttered those words. He spoke softly, but his words somehow resounded clearly in the partying Shinigami's ears. His appearance made it clear he was a noble. But he wore the bare minimum of decoration. Even Kyoraka, the second son of a high noble family, didn't recognize him. Can I offer you a drink maybe? The young man hears a female voice behind him, that's him. That's Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi. The black-haired woman laughs loudly. She's wearing a white kimono, worn in a way that exposes much skin, and an excessive amount of decorations. 2 wide leather straps are crossed over her face, covering her eyes. The man tells her to not to state the obvious and to move away. She does as he says, although she calls him cold and says she hopes he'll lose. Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi. I heard that, if I kill you in front of over 200 soldiers, I will gain the title Kenpachi and the position of captain. Kuroyoshiki confirms this. I'd like to duel to the death right now then. Although I don't mind waiting until you have sobered up, Captain. The other Shinigami laugh at his request. Does he have a death wish? But Kyoraka, the worried 4th Division members and Kuroyoshiki aren't laughing. I don't need to sober up. Which he then proceeds to stand up. His members are shocked, but quickly make room when they realize he's serious. They send pitiful glances towards the young man. He'll lose. He isn't even carrying a Zanpakuto. They form a circle around Kuroyoshiki and the young man. Kuroyoshiki asks Kyoraka to act as a witness. Kyoraka tells the young man there are other ways to become a captain. The man responds that he has no interest in small talk. The man's words may appear arrogant, but Kyoraka notes the lack of emotion in his voice. Kyoraka warns Kuroyoshiki to be careful. Kyoraka silently thinks that the man's lack of a Zanpakuto doesn't necessarily mean he's weak. Leader of the Kido Corps, Tsukubishi Tessai, could compete with a captain with the power of Kido alone. However, seeing Kuruyashiki's smile, Kyoraka knows it's pointless to try and stop him. Kuruyashiki has won many of these kinds of duels. The young man asks if the requirements for the duel have been met. Kuruyashiki says they can start anytime. I see, then your life won't be pointless. The next moment, blood sprays out from all over Kuruyashiki's body. It's as if a tornado of blades burst out of his body. No one saw the young man draw his zanpakuto, nor throw a kido. He hadn't even moved. Even so, he was now the new Kenpachi. A man stronger than Kuruyashiki had appeared, just as Kuruyashiki had wished for. Somewhere in Hawaiko Mundo, the Shinigami weren't the only ones who had witnessed the 7th Kenpachi's demise. Even though, at this point in time, the sheer concept of surveillance camera didn't exist in the human world yet, there were bug-type hollows that did possess this kind of ability. And a certain humanoid hollow, who had these small hollows under his control, had used them to watch the duel. He was Vasto Lord and he was the one behind the hollow attack in Soul Society a few hours ago. This is Yami's phrase, but this is truly suerte. He had planned on dissecting Kuruyashiki's dead body. However, he doesn't mind this development either. He'll rewind the records of the recording spirit bugs to analyze what happened in the duel. The man lets out an insane laugh. Then he turns his eyes to the white spider-type hollow. He tells the spider to feel honored. I had planned to kill you, but these events inspired me to try a new experiment. I'll let you continue to be my marmot. The spider lowers its head, feeling slightly happy. It expresses its gratitude towards the Vasto Lord who will eventually become an Arankar and Espada thanks to Aizen Sosuke. Thank you very much, Shielaporo-sama. Present day. The name, Kenpachi, after being passed to its 10th successor Kigenju Kenpachi, is now held by its 11th successor, Zaraki Kenpachi also known as Kenny by some. However, there is no record of the 8th Kenpachi ever being defeated. There's not only no record of the fight, there is no record of the man himself either. All records were destroyed on order of Central 46. Even so, his existence was carved deeply in the hearts of many Shinigami. He was an extraordinary criminal who had exposed even Soul Society itself to danger. An endless sea of white sand. The home of hollows, Hawaiko Mundo. A young Arankar, Nell too, runs across the sand near Las Noches, crying out for help. She's followed by Dondo Chakaburstan, Peshi Guatik and their pet, Bawabawa. They love to play eternal tag. Today, however, Nell isn't the only one being chased. All 4 of them are running for their lives. A group of more than 100 Arankars is chasing them. They say they want to play with Nell. But, considering the way they sometimes released a Sero, Nell didn't feel inclined to stop running. Ichigo. Help us, Ichigo. Just a little over 11 months ago Nell met Ichigo Kurosaki and his friends. Nell last remembers Ichigo being in trouble when faced with the Espada Neutra, but she doesn't remember what happened beyond that event. She woke up to the sight of a scary Shinigami with an eye patch and ran for her life. Afterwards she heard from the Quincy traveling with them and the humans that Ichigo had already returned to the human world. She had tried to go with the humans in order to express her gratitude towards Ichigo, but she had caught the eye of another scary Shinigami, Kuretsuchi Mayuri, who wanted to use her as a sample. She managed to run away thanks to the Quincy and the others stopping Mayuri, but when she returned, the Quincy, humans and Shinigami were already gone. Until now, in order to stave off loneliness and the attachment she garnered for the orange-haired Shinigami, she hadn't uttered Ichigo's name even once. Peshi and Dondo Chaka share a glance and decide to fight back. Alright, brother. Time for plan B. They mix sand and Pesha's infinite slime to create a quicksand-like substance, but their plan backfires when Nell nearly drowns too. They save her, but she's passed out. This causes a group of Arankar named the Picaro to also free themselves. Peshi and Dondo Chaka release Sero Syncretico and hit the Picaro following them. The attack takes out roughly half of the Picaro. The other half release their own Seros in response. Not just once, no, several seconds, they each continue releasing Sero attacks, creating a large crater in the sand. Nell and the others are nowhere to be found. Did they vaporize? The Picaro start to think about who they'll play with next. Redborn. Nah, he's been putting on airs ever since Baragan and Aizen left. What about Lupi? Nope, he's dead. Kakapuro. Don't know where he is. Gantenbane. Don't know either. How about we go to the Manos forest? They say there's a strong red-haired Shinigami there. Great. The group then head towards Manos forest, but then suddenly sense a strange Ryutsu. There's a lonely-looking woman with a mask covering the right side of her face. Who is that? I've never seen her in Las Noches before. They head towards her, but she melts into the air and disappears. They try to find her using Pesquisa and notice there was another familiar Ryutsu besides hers, but they can't remember whose. The Picaro decide on their next game. The first one to find the masked woman wins. They open a garganta and, carrying their fallen fellow Picaro on their shoulders, head into the Dongai. Silence soon returns to the desert. Then Dondochaka jumps out of the sand. He had dug himself in the crater. He opens his mouth and throws up Bawabawa, Nell, Pesci and a large amount of sand. He had swallowed the three and dug himself deep in the sand by swallowing sand. They think this helped them to evade being picked up by the Picaro's Pesquisa. They didn't know the Picaro had actually been distracted by someone else. Pesci decides to dub this Plan C. But this causes Pesci to frown. He can sense the remainders of two familiar Ryutsu, but he tells himself it's impossible. Then, Nell wakes up, asking where Picaro went. Pesci can't sense them anywhere and assumes they used a garganta to go to the human world. Nell is worried for Ichigo, but Pesci reminds her of Ichigo's strength, which reassures Nell. What she doesn't know is that Ichigo has lost his powers. He wouldn't even be able to see her now. But she also doesn't know that there are others who can protect the people, in place of Ichigo. A stubborn Quincy, a Shinigami with an afro. And one more person. A hero much more famous than the previous two. The hero's name is. His name is the Great Spirit Hunter and Protector of the Innocent, of course, Mr. Don Kanonji. The host announces his name and the audience cheers. Don laughs and shouts, "Bahahaha. Spirits are always with you." The people in the audience cross their arms in front of their chests at the same time and laugh along, "Bohahaha." Don, dressed in gaudy clothes and a pair of sunglasses, waves proudly to his audience. He's a spiritual medium and a hero to children across the entire nation. His real name is Kanonji Masao. Don's spirit program is starting to fall in ratings lately, but that didn't slow him down one bit. He'd be satisfied with just a single viewer. His producer and staff knew this, but still put all their effort into this Karakura special. Even so, they couldn't give him the same spectacular entrance, skydiving, as the last time. That's because Karakura town, famous as a spirit hotspot, had suffered many civilian casualties nearly 2 years ago. It had ended up casting a dark shadow over the city. The city was very hesitant to cooperate with a spirit medium show nowadays. Many people had died because of Yami's Gonzui, soul inhalation, and by getting into contact with Aizen, who had merged with the Hogyoku. The government dubbed it as a natural outbreak of gas, and this had been declared as the official cause of death to the civilians who had no knowledge of hollows and Shinigami. The purpose of the show is to exorcise the masked woman which had been appearing all over Karakura town. Don surmised she might be connected to hollows in some way. And, although they had a bus to take him and his crew to the woman's location whenever she should appear, Don preferred to use his own beloved, imported, high-class, open car, Jeanne d'Arc. There was a sudden noise and Don felt a chill. He and his crew turned to the direction of the noise. But Don is the only one who can see the child with white headphones standing on top of the bus. Behind him, there's a large black hole, like a wild beast's open mouth. Then the hole closes. Don can sense that the boy is no ordinary spirit. The boy murmurs, "Weird. I'm sure it's around here." Noticing eyes on him, the boy talks to Don and his crew. Don responds. The boy realizes Don is the only one who can see him and asks if he's a Shinigami. Don denies this and introduces himself. The boy gets his name wrong and calls him thick-headed and tone-deaf. Don is appalled, but quickly recovers. "What are you doing here? Are you looking for your parents? I, the great Don Kanoji, will help you look." The boy says he's looking for a woman with a skull covering half her face. Don responds that they're probably looking for the same person. The boy proposes a race. Who can find her first? If the boy wins, Don will play with him until he gets bored of Don. Unknowingly agreeing, not knowing how dangerous playing with the boy would be. The boy is thrilled. The boy taps his headphones and starts talking to the other Picaro. "Did you hear that?" The other Picaro appear from behind trees, telephone poles and roofs. They chatter amongst themselves. "Won't we get scolded if they play with a human? But Barragan is gone. And so is Tucson. Won't Halibel get angry? Let's just ignore her. Let's kill and play." But he looks weak, though. The Picaro jump out into the night in search of the woman. Don mutters to himself. "How should I play with so many of them? A soccer ball tournament." His producer, who didn't hear the conversation, is confused and worries whether Don has been possessed or something. Don assures him he's alright. He's ready to take on the boy's challenge. The producer doesn't get it, but he's happy that this will probably create a wonderful program. The headphoned Picaro is looking for the woman using Pesquisa. He notices she's no longer in the human world. A garganta opens next to him and another Picaro beckons him inside. Several Picaro have assembled inside. They use Pesquisa again and sense something strange. Weird remains of Ryutsu were left in the area, different from the Ryutsu of hollows or Shinigami. It was also slightly different from what Shinigami call Reiraku, spirit coils. It was thin like a spider's thread. And it stretched out into the torrent of Reishi. Where does the thread lead to? One Picaro remembers, RRR. I remember, over there, that's where Aizen-sama came from, RRR. The Soul Society. Led on by curiosity, the Picaro decide to go there, not realizing how foolish it was to go to their enemy's land. Their purity was both their weakness and strength. To which side will the scales fall? At the same time in the Garganta, at unknown coordinates. The Valley of Space exists between Soul Society, Hawako Mundo and the human world. It's a Garganta road where Reishi storms swirl. It connects all the worlds to one another but currently is only connected to 3 out of the 12 original worlds. A place of darkness filled with heavy Reiryoku, spiritual power. And a beautiful young woman, with a mask covering half of her face, was walking on the thin road she had made inside it. She's walking alone but there's another presence whispering in her ear. The voice asks her, why did you let yourself be seen by Picaro? Did I want to save Neliel? She shouldn't pay attention to that outcast. But he'll forgive her. Those Picaro might work as decoy later. Nevertheless, the voice reminds her she's just a tool. She apologizes. He says he'll let it slide. He's in a good mood. His research might bear fruit soon. But you mustn't be killed or else all will be for naught. Hide out in the human world and flee whenever you run into a Shinigami, Hollow or Quincy. No need to engage in battle. Although I doubt that any Shinigami could actually kill you that easily. The woman responds with a sad look in her eyes. Understood. Shielaporo-sama. Rukongai, Western Area, White Road Gate. There are 4 gates in the wall that separates Seraite and Rukongai. The giant Jidanbu, the guard of White Road Gate, is on duty. Just as one of the Picaro appears before him, she tells him she wants to go into Seraite. Jidanbu, who didn't sense any hostility from her and didn't know Arankars look similar to humans, assumes she's a Rukongai child and gently turns her down. Oh, he's a guard. So if I kill him, can I pass? How about they play a game? Jidanbu doesn't take her seriously until he notices the sword hanging from her waist. Could she be a Ryoka by any chance? Suddenly the girl closes her eyes, tilts her head and, as if she's talking to someone, says, no way, Shibata-kun. Really? The girl tells Jidanbu she doesn't have time to play with him anymore and leaves. Jidanbu is happy he didn't have to raise his axe against a little girl and continues guarding his gate. A few minutes later, he'll hear a thunderous sound which will shake the air surrounding Seraite. Rukongai, somewhere in the western area. Hey, could you be Shibata-kun by any chance, little one? Shibata Yuichi turns to the owner of the voice and stiffens. The boy in front of him is smiling innocently, but has the faint air of a hollow. Yes that's me. The boy smiles and calls the other Picaro to the location. Come over here, everyone. Shibata, who once turned into a parrot, is here. Several Picaro appear and surround Shibata. Amongst them are those who look like little animals with white skulls. Shibata is immediately reminded of the hollow who killed his mother, Shrieker. The Picaro start chatting amongst themselves. Shibata. The boy we found when one of us slipped into the human world. We talked about saving him and killing Shrieker for him once he became a hollow. But a Shinigami saved him, so Shibata never became a hollow. No fair. He could have become our new friend. Yuichi, not knowing what to do, tries to talk to them. The Picaro turn to him and tell him he was quite famous for playing chase with Shrieker. How about you become a hollow and play with us? Yuichi is scared and thinks back to his brief time with Sato, the man who he had relied on before. But it's not Sato who saves him. A large shadow suddenly appears like a gust of wind, grabs him by the neck and tosses him to the roof of a nearby house. The man who tossed him has a bald head and a stern look on his face. A Shinigami. Akaku Madarame, 3rd seat of the 11th Division. Madarame had been on patrol in West Rukongai just as the alarm rang that a Rancor was detected in the Soul Society. All seated officers had been ordered to repel the Ryoka and or to investigate their motives. He thought this meant it was his lucky day, but after seeing a bunch of children before him, Madarame felt he was unlucky instead. Seeing as the Arrancars weren't attacking anyone nor radiated any hostility, Madarame tells them to just scram off back to Hueco Mundo. No, you can't just let them leave like that, you know. The mission also includes finding out the enemy's motives. Yumashika Yasugawa, 5th seat of the 11th Division, appears behind Madarame as the two good friends often patrol together. Are you two both Shinigami? If so, can you take use inside Seraite? This only proceeds to anger Madarame at the sound of the ridiculous request. Which prompts Yumashika to explain that Arrancars aren't allowed inside. That's unfair. After all, that lady is an Arrancar, yet she's inside. Their words surprise Yasugawa and Madarame. Stop talking nonsense, the Seraite is protected by its Sekiseki wall, which doesn't allow any reishi to pass through, and the Shikanmaku dome-shaped barrier surrounding the Seraite. Yes, it is possible that the gates could be breached, or the dome could be pierced with great force, but for an Arrancar to sneak in, unnoticed, was and is unheard of. This prompts the Picaro to tell them. After all, her threads continue inside the walls. The third seat starts to demand for clarification of what they mean and asks them to tell them what they know, but Madarame suddenly there's a thunderous noise and black smoke rises from Serite's center. Where the Development Institute is located. Maybe there really is someone inside already. Yumashika. Madarame turns back to the Picaro to ask them who that lady is, but they're already gone. Yuchi says they ran away and Madarame tells himself, Madarame, I really am unlucky today. 3 minutes earlier, Research and Development Institute, none of the researchers had noticed. If Mayuri had been present in the lab, he may have, but he was currently still on trial. A thin thread of negation, so thin it was invisible to the human eye. It crept further and further into the institute. The researchers are chatting amongst themselves while analyzing the data about the Ryoka that's being sent in. It seems Kurumadani had also reported about the masked woman earlier, but they hadn't analyzed his report yet. Akon suddenly felt a chill. Not only him. The others did too. They could sense a sinister ryutsu boil up from inside the observatory room, the room which they were currently in. Everyone stopped what they were doing. And yet they heard the sound of someone typing on a keyboard from the corner of the room. From the president's desk. When they turned to the sound, they saw a man sitting behind the desk, with a faint smile on his face. I see. The man who killed me is the president of this place. While looking at the data on the screen, the Arrancar with a glasses-shaped mask calmly uttered those words. One of the researchers whispers, isn't that the specimen that's being preserved in fluid? The word, specimen, angers the Arrancar that's currently sitting in front of them. My corpse has been degraded to a specimen. How insulting. Even so, I think I'll take a look at this specimen. You don't get the chance to observe your own corpse every day, you know. I don't clearly remember the moment I died, though. The researchers remember the name on the specimen's tag, Shielaporo Grants. One of the Espada. Akon and the Arrancar, who looks identical to the specimen, exchange some words about how he can be here if he's in the tank and asks if he's a clone until the Arrancar draws his sword. Enough chatter. If you want to know more, figure it out yourself. If you can survive long enough, that is. A few seconds later, even though the following explosion in the institute acted as a signal to everyone that a Ryoka had infiltrated Seraite, only one person had actually noticed the negation thread. This person was locked deep underground. In a place for the worst criminals. In the dark under the 1st Division's barracks. The criminal remained silent, only opening his eyes. As if on cue, a woman's laughter rang in his ears. Kyahaha. It's been a while. When did you last open your eyes? 250 years ago. Or 500. Or maybe 20.000. Or was it 3 seconds ago? Kyahaha. The criminal slowly opens his mouth and says. When Sosuke Aizen was locked up here. A small light, as if triggered by his voice, burns in the darkness. Left, right, up, down, darkness is everywhere. The criminal sees a woman in a white kimono with a leather obi kimono sash covering her eyes. She remembers. It's true, the criminal last opened his eyes when Aizen had been sent to this place. She retells the events that led to Aizen's downfall, receiving the orange-haired Shinigami representative's massive attack, being sealed by Urahara Kazuki, and being sentenced to 20.000 years. She knew it all. So why did you open your eyes this time? A thin thread entered me. A thread of reishi. No, of negation. He offered no further explanation. The criminal was a man of few words. I'll take a moment to consider whether I should leave this place, the Mukin. Research and Development Institute. The institute is heavily damaged. The 4th Division has arrived to take care of the injured researchers. The Zale lookalike is nowhere to be seen. Mayuri's trial has been put on hold after news of the explosion was out. He and Nemu, who had taken her with him to the trial, are back at the institute. Mayuri is talking to Akon. I apologize for the damage, Captain. I should have been more vigilant. Mayuri ignores his apology and just wants answers. Why didn't the enemy finish them off? Akon answers it's because the lookalike had a strange reaction when he found the specimen. 30 minutes earlier, all the researchers had survived Arankar's attack. He praises them. Seems they weren't as non-combatant as he had assumed. He'll be sure to study their corpses later. But he has something else to take care of. Male Ryoka walks towards a pillar-shaped tank. The specimen which he's looking for is floating in a luminous fluid inside it. Usually, when an Arankar dies after being cut with a Zanpakuto, its soul is purified and its body disappears. Mayuri made a special device to prevent this, allowing him to preserve his specimens. The man laughs when he finally gets a look at the specimen. Ha ha ha, this matches the recording spirit bug's data. A dumb look on my face, not even realizing my own death. This is so pitiful it makes me angry. He turns back to the researchers and says, rejoice. You get the rare chance to see the refusion of a soul and body that died once. Then he dips his hand in the liquid and touches the specimen. Nothing happens. He curses Mayuri. He must have done something. He reaches for his sword, ready to take his anger out on the researchers, but stops. He senses the Ryutsu of the man who cut Noitra and Yami. He doesn't want to take that beast on in his current condition. Or in any condition for that matter. The Ryoka blends into the air and disappears, along with the specimen. At the same time there's a thunderous noise. Present time, having heard Akon's retelling of the events, Mayuri grinds his teeth. In other words, Captain Zaraki is the one who destroyed the wall. The 11th Division was supposed to be near the gates. However, Zaraki had probably gotten lost again, had seen the explosion and had headed towards the institute. Mayuri asks if the Arankar blended into the air in the same way as the masked woman in Karakura town. Akon says that, judging by the footage on the woman, it's the same. Akon asks if Mayuri knows what the Ryoka was. Mayuri says he can make a guess, but I hope my guess is wrong, though. Soul Society, somewhere in Saraite Kyoraka Shunsui sees a female Ryoka standing near the little retreat where Yukitaki Jushiro, the 11th Division's captain who suffers from a lung disease, tends to rest. Yukitaki hadn't attended the emergency captain meeting due to his health. Kyoraka planned to check up on him, and, if possibly, to discuss things. Captain Commander Yamamoto had informed the attendees that they were now permitted to use their full powers and to carry their Zanpakuto at all times. A white skull covered the right side of her face. An Arankar. Kyoraka lowers his Ryutsu as low as he can to remain unnoticed. He decides to wait and see what she'll do. Kyoraka feels both curious and cautious at how quiet her Ryutsu is. Everything in Soul Society is made up of reishi. Hers was as quiet as that of a stone lantern or a tree. Are you lost, miss? She turns to him in surprise, and at the same time, the kind of Ryutsu which you'd normally expect of an Arankar, does rise up now. You are the person who was with Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi-san back then, aren't you? Her words surprise Kyoraka, as she starts to melt into the air. I'm sorry. The scenery was just so beautiful that I unintentionally connected to it. I'll disappear now, so please don't mind me. Why does she know Kuroyoshiki? However, the woman is already gone before I can ask her. Yukitaki pushes the bamboo screen in front of his retreat to the side and calls out to Kyoraka, Kyoraka. What's wrong? I thought I sensed an Arankar for a second. Kyoraka says, it's nothing. And he really hopes it's nothing, but he has a bad feeling. Not because of the name Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi, but because he remembers the man who had killed Kuroyoshiki. North Saraite, Black Ridge Gate. A few of the Pikaro and Shinigami are in battle near the Black Ridge Gate. The Shinigami are suspicious of how quickly these Arankars seem to heal. They do go down when cut, but then stand up again as if nothing happened after a short while. That's when Pikaro suddenly stopped fighting. They notice that there are suddenly a lot less threads inside the walls. The masked lady must have left. Some Pikaro want to continue playing with the Shinigami, but the headphone Pikaro reminds them of their race against Don Kananji and they use Sonito to leave. Meanwhile, the Shinigami receive word that Zaraki is heading towards them to engage the enemy. But the enemy is already gone. Zaraki isn't going to be happy. Underground prison, lowest level, 8th prison, Mukan, darkness. Everywhere, making you lose sense for what's left, right, up or down. That is the prison called Mukan. There were only a few prisoners in Mukan, but even so, the Soul Society preserved this space at all costs. To make its criminals unable to feel the world. And, at the same time, to hide its criminals from the world. To make them be forgotten. To make them into beings which didn't exist. There was barely anyone in Soul Society who knew who the Mukan's first prisoner was, and whether that person still existed. But many knew its latest prisoner. Sosuke Aizen, a Shinigami, yet king of the Hollows. The traitor who tried to kill the Soul King to take the seat of God. Immortal thanks to the power of the Hogyoku. And now is imprisoned in Mukan. His limbs, eyes, ears, mouth, the feeling of touch, everything had been bound and sealed. But a part of his senses was suddenly freed. Part of the cloth covering his face was peeled off, freeing one eye, one ear and his mouth. His freed eye saw darkness. But not pure darkness. In this place where there should be no light, there was a lantern burning brightly in front of his chair. There was also a man standing next to the lantern. Neither of these things seemed to surprise Aizen. And while a normal person would have needed several hours to regain the ability to speak properly after being sealed for over half a year, Aizen spoke calmly. Should I be honored to lay my eyes on such a senior prisoner? What should I call you? Your real name, Azashiro Suya. Or the title given to the strongest Shinigami in Soul Society. The 8th captain of the 11th division. Azashiro Kenpachi. The woman standing behind Azashiro finds Aizen's calmness hilarious. We should take the Hogyoku from him and leave him here. Azashiro tells the woman to stay quiet and proceeds to add. If that were possible, then Aizen would have been stopped when Jin took it, and he has already completely subjugated it. It is a part of him essentially. Aizen, I have no interest in the Hogyoku, nor in your crimes. I simply want to ask about the outside world. Why ask a question such as that? You can see through all of Seraite, even while being in Mukan. You're a man on whom even my Kyoka Sujitsu's illusions will likely not work. What could I possibly tell you that you don't already know? Azashiro remains silent, but the woman laughs. It took Azashiro 2 weeks to see through Sujitsu's illusion. He muttered, something is strange, the entire time. He silences her again. He says he wants to know about outside of Seraite. And he also wants to ask about Aizen's defeat. He hadn't expected him to lose against Kurosaki Ichigo. The woman interrupts again. She says, Azashiro had predicted you would be stopped by the Zero Division until you absorbed the Hogyoku and started to evolve, and by the time you had your butterfly form you were equal to the Soul King himself. But it never even got to that point where you could kill Ryo. I do wonder if you're embarrassed, Azashiro, that you got it wrong. My defeat. If I look back on how disordered my heart was back then, I can say that defeat in itself was a meaningful experience. You should experience it once more, as it seems that you didn't learn from your last taste of it. Azashiro disagrees with Aizen's words. I see no merit in experiencing defeat. But I will discuss it no further since I have no interest in meaningless chatter. Which prompts Aizen to answer Azashiro's questions. Azashiro thanks him. After all, this serves no merit to Aizen, being he doesn't get anything out of it. To which Aizen disagrees. On the contrary, predicting your actions and its outcome based on your questions will serve as a nice way to kill time. Having gotten answers to all his questions, Azashiro disappears by melting into the air. In the same way the masked woman and the Zale look-alike had done. Aizen closes his eyes with a faint smile on his face, imagining the outcome of Azashiro's actions, knowing most likely how it will already turn out. The Mukan returns to being a place of absolute darkness once again. Karakura Town, Mashiba area, sunflower sewing shop. In Karakura Town, one of the last remaining Quincy Ryu Ishida is on the phone with Orihime Inoue, using the pay phone outside Sunflower Sewing, having snuck out of the hospital a couple of hours ago. Both of them sensed the Pikaro last night appearing and disappearing in town. They decided not to inform Ichigo, who moved to Kuo, as it would just upset him. And they haven't seen Sato around lately, as he's frequently out of town these days. Orihime hasn't been herself after Ichigo lost his powers, as she constantly worried about him, that he isn't in the same town, as Ishida reassures Inoue that she should go and cheer on Tatsuki at her championships they're being held in another town. He'll handle things here and tells her she can always go visit Kurosaki after the tournament is being held in a town 30 minutes away from Ichigo. Ishida had also sensed the masked woman time and time again for over a year, but she'd always be gone before he could get to her. Ichigo must have heard rumors about the masked woman on the news, but he never called and asked, so Ishida, Inoue and Sato never brought it up when they did speak on the phone, as Ichigo would call time to time to check in on them, but mostly speaking with Inoue. I swear Ichigo is so dense he's probably the only one who doesn't realize Inoue is in love with him, or that he doesn't know how to approach such a delicate subject. Ryu often felt frustrated at how Ichigo pretended not to care. Ishida knew what it's like to lose your powers. It had happened to him. His father had helped him get his powers back, but it seemed that that method didn't work on Shinigami. Heading towards the shop, Ishida passes a poster promoting Don Kanonji's show. As far as Ishida had seen during the public recordings, Don could indeed see spirits, but his exorcism methods have been all wrong. He takes one last glance at the poster and mutters. His fashion sense is pretty good, but his colors lack uniformity. He should focus on cold colors. Seoul Society, Saraite's shopping district, in front of the Silver Dragonfly glasses. Half a day had passed since the Arankar attack in the Saraite. All the Arankars are gone now. The danger level had been lowered in all areas except near the Development Institute. Even so, the general populace was encouraged to stay inside. The shopping district felt deserted. There was hardly anyone outside, and most shops were closed due to fear of another surprise attack. However, the glasses shop Silver Dragonfly is open for business. It's run by Ginjiro Shirogane, the former 6th Division vice captain. Umaeda Mareo, the youngest child of the Umaeda nobles, enters the shop. Ginjiro warns her that she shouldn't be outside. She apologizes, but says she really wanted to collect her order, a pair of glasses for her brother, Marajiraozabu. They ended up exchanging small talk. It seems Marajiraozabu has been invited to join the Development Institute. Many members of the Umaeda family enter the Onmitsukido, but Mareo hopes to enter the 4th Division someday, as she wants to break away from the mold of being an assassin, as she prefers saving lives than to kill. The glasses are a birthday gift. But it seems that Mihan Ginjiru's granddaughter, who works part-time in the shop while also working as the 6th Division's 9th seat, forgot to refill the gift paper. He goes to the back of the store to find some more. He tells Mareo to sit inside in case Ryoka reappears. After a minute or so, Mareo sees a white shadow. Briefly, she's afraid it's the Ryoka, but she's reassured as she catches the glimpse of a Haori. However, she didn't know. She didn't know that the man wearing this Haori wasn't one of the Gote 13's current captains. Nor did she know he was supposed to be locked up in the Mukin. The man approaches the counter. He places a cloth bag on the counter. It has money inside it, judging by the sound. He calls out to her. You're Umaeda Mareo. Out of the good-for-nothing Umaeda clan, you're the best one. You should leave that house right away if you do not wish to waste the rest of your life with such disgraces. Several minutes later, somewhere in Saraite, the vice captain of the 2nd Division, Umaeda Marekio, is chewing on some rice crackers while whining about having to stay up all night. He's also the commander of the patrol corps of the Onmitsukido. He will not be able to take a break until the danger level has gone down completely. He gets a call that his little sister is in the shopping district. Furthermore, she seems to be arguing with a man wearing the Haori of the 11th Division, in front of the Silver Dragonfly. He rushes to the scene, under the mistaken assumption that little sister has gotten into a fight with Zaraki of all people. In front of the Silver Dragonfly, Azashiro calmly left the store after his blunt remark to Mareo. She followed him outside, assuming the man must have had some misunderstanding with her family. Azashiro says he's never been directly wronged by her family, but they are a waste of space as nobles. They exchange some more words, but Azashiro has no interest in any further useless chatter. Marekio arrives, notices that the man is not Zaraki, and tells him that falsely wearing a Haori is a grave crime. Azashiro says he knows this, calling Marekio by his full name. When Azashiro moves to leave, the enraged Marekio tries to grab him, but he's suddenly lifted into the air and thrown to the ground again, knocking the wind out of him. It's as if some invisible force had grabbed him. Azashiro hadn't moved, but his words made it clear that it had been his doing. I don't like pointless fighting. I hope this was enough to make you understand the difference between our powers. Knowing he's outmatched in every way, Marekio stifles his fear and gets back up. He draws his sword and tells Mareo to run. Suddenly they hear another voice, Bakudo number 63. Seijo Sabaku. Ginjiro immobilizes Azashiro with a spell. Then, another man appears. Mareo and Marekio's father, Umaeda Muranoshin. He throws the binding spell Bakudo number 75 at Azashiro. 5 pillars of light surround the criminal. Ginjiro throws another spell, Bakudo number 61, and Muranoshin finishes it off with Bakudo number 81, Dankuo. Mareo and Marekio are impressed with this serious side of their father, which they hardly ever see. It seems Muranoshin was warned by his subordinates about the situation. Both Muranoshin and Ginjiro are no longer Shinigami. Their names have been removed from the Gotei 13's register at request. They had to hand back their Zanpakuto at retirement, but they were former vice captains. They weren't powerless in the least. If they weren't nobles, they would have most likely been sent to the maggot's nest. Azashiro asks them, "Why are both of you doing this, fighting a battle you have no hope in winning?" Muranoshin says to him, "Do not play dumb. I used to be in Onmitsukido, you know. I know full and well who you are. You're a man who still has over 19,000 years left in the Mukin. I have no other choice but to do this when I hear word that a man like you is talking to my precious daughter, feeding her your nonsense." Marekio realizes what his father's words mean. This man before him is a Mukin escapee. A place that's even harder to escape from than hell itself. Who in the world is he? Azashiro sighs. It seems I didn't explain my question well enough. The 4 layers of Bakudo melt into the air in an instant. I asked why you attacked me, while knowing that your attacks won't work on me. Somewhere in West Rukongai, one of the Pikaro is surprised to see 2 large arms growing out of the ground. They're holding up a banner saying, Shiba Kuakaku. What's that? It's so cool. Fascinated by the Shiba's unique style, the Pikaro walks around for a bit. Then he hears a voice behind him, Shihuan Yoruichi. She's amused that an Arankar likes the Shiba's style. The Pikaro asks Yoruichi if she wants to play. Yoruichi says she doesn't mind playing tag with him. On one condition, she'll do the chasing. Then the Pikaro senses another presence near him and, in front of the silver dragonfly, the laughing woman in the white kimono appears behind Azashiro again. She asks him, why is someone who hates wasting time on chatter spending time talking to the girl? Is she your type? No, wait, I know. It's because this sheltered little girl reminds you of her, doesn't it? Are you worried this girl will end up the same way she did? Be quiet and just stop talking. He then addresses Ginjiro and says he left money on the counter to pay the consolation money which he still owed his family 250 years ago, with interest. Please take it. Ginjiro knits his brows. It seems he understands what Azashiro is referring. Leaves, melting into the air. Then another person arrives on the scene, yelling at Marekio for leaving his post. Sui Feng, captain of the 2nd Division and commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukido. However, Marekio's father scolds Sui Feng instead, as he used to be her superior back when Yoruichi was captain. Does she, the commander-in-chief, not know what just happened? Azashiro Kenpachi was here. How could she, in her supervision corps, not have noticed this escape? Has she been sleeping on the job since Yoruichi's return? While Marekio thinks Sui Feng will probably take her anger out on him later for his father's tirade, Sui Feng contacts the Supervision Corps to confirm whether Azashiro really has escaped. Marekio tries to calm his father by praising him. You were amazing, father. I wouldn't be able to throw spells like that. But his plan backfires. His father now starts criticizing Sui Feng for not teaching his son Bakudo properly. Sui Feng admits her mistake and bows her head. This calms his father down. He tells her to train his son vigorously. Much to his lazy son's dismay, the father picks up his daughter, says he'll report their experiences to the 1st Division, and leaves. Ginjiro goes back to his shop. Left alone, Marekio drops to his knees and begs for his captain's forgiveness for his father's tirade. Sui Feng tells him this isn't the time for such things. Marekio asks, is Azashiro really that strong? Sui Feng says, the Azashiro incident happened even before Yoruichi was captain. He committed a grave crime and all captain-level staff moved into action to arrest him. However, the Gotei failed to capture him with their own hands. They couldn't even scratch him. Or even touch him because of his ability. 30 minutes later, 1st Division barracks, all captains, aside from Yukitaki who is sick, Zaraki and Mayuri who have to fix up the research and development, and Zaraki who is out hunting for the Ryoka, have gathered before Captain Commander Yamamoto. Sui Feng reports the situation. Azashiro Kenpachi has escaped the Mukin. The other prisoners are still in captivity. 5 captains reacted to Azashiro's name, Unohana Retsu, Kiyoraka Shunsui, and the newly reinstated Hirako Shinji, Utaribashi Rujiro, Rose, and Muguruma Kensai. Azashiro was captured before Hirako was captain. Rose adds it happened over 200 years ago. Kensai interjects that they were still merely seated officers back then. Hana whispers to herself, I didn't expect to hear that name again so soon. And Kyoraka thinks back to the Arankar girl he saw earlier. Is she connected to this? Hitsugaya Tushiro says he never heard of him. Kenpachi. Is that a joke or a coincidence? Kuchiki Byakuya then explains to Tushiro. The previous Kenpachi loses his title to the next Kenpachi when killed in battle, but he heard there was an exception to this. In which Yamamoto confirms that Azashiro is the exception. Azashiro became the 8th Kenpachi after killing the 7th Kenpachi, Kuroyoshiki, in battle. But Azashiro was sent to Muken, undefeated. The 9th Kenpachi was appointed to the vice-captain of the 11th Division at the time. Kyoraka then explains that, the 9th Kenpachi was killed by Kigenju, a strong warrior from the Rukongai. And Zaraki is the one who killed Kigenju, thereby becoming the current Kenpachi. We have never even seen Azashiro's Zanpakuto. We knew he had one, but they couldn't see it. Komamura Sajin asks, was it an illusion type Zanpakuto, like Aizen Suigetsu? That possibility exists, but when questioned by Central 46 during his arrival, Azashiro had said that, he was already showing it. Hitsugaya is surprised Central 46 let this slide. Kyoraka says that the Kenpachi is a special case. The 10th Kenpachi, Kigenju, hardly ever listened to Central 46 too. Well, in other words, you could say that the Kenpachi is a privileged class in Seraite. Now that I think about it, Azashiro-kun may have decided to become Kenpachi with that in mind. Sounds like they were afraid, to me. At the same time, somewhere in Seraite, the ruins of an execution site, Yumashika Yasugawa is in a bad mood. That's because this place reminds him of his defeat against Shiba Ganju back when Ichigo came to the Soul Society for the first time. The old execution site is a large and deep hole, with walls of sekiseki and the top sealed with shikanmaku. It had been a large prison. There were 2 large doors at the bottom. One to release criminals into the hole, and one to release hollows. Fighting to the death is a form of spectacle. One of Soul Society's dark sides. It was no longer in use, but many Shinigami and nobles had fallen prey to hollows in it. When Yumashika and Akaku had returned from the Rukongai, they had sensed a suspicious Reiraku, spirit coils. It was definitely from a Shinigami, but it was something they had never felt before. It felt ominous. The Reiraku split in 2 halfway, into different directions. Yumashika and Akaku had split up and Yumashika ended up in this place. The Reiraku had been cut off. It had probably hit the Shikanmaku halfway down the hole and vaporized. Suddenly Yumashika hears the voice of a young man, asking when they'll fill up the hole. It's a waste of space, really. The man tells Yumashika he could have won his fight against Shiba Ganju. He talks about the fight as if he had seen it himself. But that's not what angers Yumashika most. No, the man was wearing the Haori of the 11th Division. The Haori that only Zaraki was allowed to wear in his eyes. Azashiro says, Zaraki doesn't deserve the name or title of Kenpachi. He never cut down a real Kenpachi, after all. He lost to Kurosaki Ichigo before the boy had even mastered his Bankai. Those are the facts. Insulted on his captain's behalf, Yumashika releases Fuji Kujaku and attacks Azashiro. But it fails. Then his foot sinks into the stone pavement. An illusion. I can't get out of this. Then his sleeves wrap around him like a snake, immobilizing him. The grip on his Zanpakuto weakens. What's happening? As if pulled on by an invisible thread, his Zanpakuto moves in midair and eventually lands in Azashiro's hand. It returns to its pre-Shikai state. Azashiro then asks Yumashika, why do you continue to hide Rurouni Kujaku's true nature from your allies? Kujaku absorbs its opponent's Raryoku. The 11th Division tends to look down on Kido-based Zanpakuto. That's why. Zaraki and Madarame Akaku don't seem like the kind of men who would hold you in contempt merely for using a Kido-type Zanpakuto, though. Azashiro didn't utter those words to anger Yumashika. It was purely a question. Even if those two wouldn't mind, I myself would not be able to forgive myself for bringing shame to the 11th Division's name. I will not expose your secret, so no need to fret. However, I will be borrowing Kujaku for a little while. To which Yumashika objects, of course, but he can't move. Azashiro sighs and turns his heel, ready to walk away. But the woman reappears before him, laughing as always. For someone who dislikes pointless chatter, you sure do it often. Let me guess. Lingering attachment. You did work properly as a captain the first year, after all. Did you think that you would make them agree with your ideas? No way. Ha 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 ha. Maybe if you had cut down Kuroyoshiki with a sword fair and square. But you used a sneak attack in their eyes. Didn't think you were up to the task to fight him one-on-one. Azashiro, visibly irritated, answers, this is the 6,969th time she's told him this. It makes perfect sense for him to have done his work as captain properly. After all, the extermination of the Hollows is my wish. She's amused that he actually bothered to keep the score, as he tells her to disappear. Then Yumashika, still immobilized, speaks, can I ask one thing? Who are you talking to? The dimensional gap 30 minutes prior to Azashiro escape, as a promise to help him escape I would be allowed access to the place my powers cannot take me, the Soul Society is a way it would be the only way I could get to that of the Soul King. On the journey to the Mukin, which is a separate space altogether from the Soul Society, another person besides the one she was going to free was there. Who are you? As the visitor thought to themselves, his power is on par with mine. No, in fact surpasses mine, yet they're sealed to a chair. My, who would have thought a heavenly dragon would come pay me a visit in a place like this? What do I owe the honors of someone like you coming such a long way? Smug sitting in a chair, although his face was covered and sealed he could talk, it was none other than Sasuke. So you're aware of my kind or what I am, but how is someone as powerful as you bound to a measly chair? It's almost as if you choose to be. Despite not being able to see, you could tell I was a dragon. All I'll say is your disrespect of who I am is quite astonishing to me. My name is Ophis the Ouroboros dragon, but I wasted enough time conversing with you. She then proceeded to break Azashiro's seals and free him before she left, reminding him of their deal. 1 Street Division Barracks. After Yumashika's defeat, Umaeda Morenoshin finishes his report to head Captain Yamamoto. But then he remembers one last thing about his encounter. Azashiro had turned to a direction where nobody was standing, and had said, be silent, like someone was there with him. At the ruins of the execution site, Azashiro tells Yumashika that he was simply talking to himself, something like that. Yumashika on the floor says, why you won't finish me off? There's no need. Shinigami exist to exterminate hollows, to guide spirits and to maintain the balance between Soul Society and the human world. There's no need for bloodshed amongst themselves. I'll return Kujaku once I'm done with it, and disappears once again. At 1st Division Barracks, from a corner of the room, Yoruichi suddenly speaks. Azashiro Kenpachi was talking to Yorozakuro. I don't recall summoning you, Yoruichi Shihoin, but you might as well stay if you're here. I had wanted to come earlier, but I was busy playing tag. Sui Feng asks who or what Yorozakuro is. Yoruichi answers that, it's the name of Azashiro's Zanpakuto. Why do you know this information? Yoruichi answers that she heard it from Yorozakuro herself. 100 years plus several decades ago, Tsukyoku Hill, underground training grounds, Urahara shows his new Tenshintai divine transfer body to Yoruichi. It's a human-shaped doll that can materialize a Zanpakuto when stabbed with said Zanpakuto, a training tool. My current model can only do it for 30 minutes, but the finished one should last 3 days. I'm about to test it out with my own Benihime, but the doll starts to change before he has even drawn his Zanpakuto. It turns into a lively woman, whose eyes are covered by a leather obi. She laughs, Kihahaha. I wanted to see you, Kazuki-chan. Did you miss me? Or were you too busy with Yoruichi-san, forgetting me? Kihahaha. But Urahara doesn't know her. She introduces herself, she's Yorozakuro. They've never met before, but she knows everything about them. Kihahaha. I wasn't captain yet at this point in time, but I was part of the Onmitsukido. And she couldn't ignore Yorozakuro's next words, I'm the Zanpakuto of Azashiro Kenpachi, who is currently in the Mukin. Nice to meet you. Present time, 1st Division Barracks. Yoruichi says they got on wonderfully for the remaining 30 minutes. Yorozakuro had talked freely about her own abilities, saying she'd enjoy seeing her wielder fall into crisis. Yamamoto says he never heard about this before. Yoruichi answered she had reported it to the head of the Onmitsukido, who in turn had reported it to Central 46. Central 46 had been ordered to keep it quiet to prevent an outbreak of panic. She probably won't get in trouble for saying it now, though. The Central 46 sages from the time are all dead now, either by Aizen's hands or by illness from an accident even before that. Hitsugaya asks whether Azashiro's powers are really that great. Yoruichi answers that he might make a good match versus Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu in terms of ability, not power. In shock, Marekio yells, Wah, he's on the same level as Aizen. Are you serious, Yoruichi-san? Sui Feng promptly kicks him. No, you idiot lady. Yoruichi clearly said just the ability of his Zanpakuto. If he was at Aizen's level we would all be screwed, being that Ichigo lost his powers. Yoruichi explains Azashiro's powers. His internal world is constantly fused with the outside world. We couldn't see his Zanpakuto, because he was always in Bankai mode. His power is the ability to fuse with all of his surroundings and to control it. The air, the ground, everything. I had tried to determine his coordinates back when he had been a wanted man. But I could never pinpoint his location to something more specific than he's in Seraite. If he could fuse with the air itself, you could not cut him. Furthermore, it meant he could kill his opponents simply by expanding the air in their lungs. Hitsugaya asks how far his range is. Yoruichi says she has already answered that question. His location couldn't be pinpointed to something more specific than, he's in Seraite. Marekio asks if that means he's already fused with all of Seraite. Yoruichi explains that Azashiro can sense everything that happens in the space he's fused with as if it's happening inside him. In other words, he could even hear the conversation they were currently having. Komamura says, Azashiro should have been able to escape Muken earlier if that's true. The Muken isn't that weak, and if Aizen can't brute force his way out, no one can. Someone had to let him out, as absurd as it sounds. It has countless seals to weaken the Zanpakuto powers of its prisoners. If Yorozukiro's words were true, Azashiro could see and hear everything in Seraite, from inside the Muken, but he was weakened to the point that he couldn't control anything. So how did he escape, and who let him out? Sui Feng says it's because of the Ryoka attack on the Development Institute. When Urahara was captain of the 12th Division, part of the sealing mechanisms were transferred to the Institute. Because it seemed safer to spread their locations out, rather than to control all seals in one spot. But this has now backfired. Normally, prisoners entered the Muken unarmed, separated from their Zanpakuto. A slight weakening in the seals shouldn't allow them to escape. But Azashiro was different. He had always been in Bankai mode. His Zanpakuto had never been taken. The seal had weakened enough for him to be able to control the outside slightly. If it was for the chair, Aizen would no doubt have been able to bust out of the Muken as well. Hiriko mentions one concern. Azashiro could use his powers to release Aizen and the other Muken prisoners. I assume he won't. His aim isn't to cause destruction or chaos. Isn't that right, Azashiro Kenpachi? Azashiro slowly melts into the room. Yamamoto asks him how he, Azashiro Suya, dared enter this room purposely using Azashiro's real name. Then he asks, for you, who once linked himself to prison, to break out of prison. Tell us what you want. The captain commander's sharp tone didn't seem to affect Azashiro in the slightest. I'm surprised you even bothered to ask me. In the past, you would have tried to take me out on the spot. I respected you, Yamamoto, for doing anything if it was in Soul Society's interest, even if that meant playing the villain's role. But Kurosaki Ichigo has changed you. How unfortunate. Yamamoto has no interest in chatter. The other captain can feel the air in the room starting to sting as his Raryoku rises. My goal hasn't changed. I don't mean to bring harm to Soul Society. All I simply want is to fulfill my mission as Shinigami, that's all. As a foothold to the complete annihilation of hollows. I will first deal with the Arankar who has half its face covered with a skull. That's all. Kyoraka interjects that Azashiro's answer isn't exactly persuasive. And what is he planning to do with the Arankar's powers? Having met her, Kyoraka was the only one who knew which Arankar Azashiro was referring to. Azashiro confirms that it's true that the Ryoka attack partially helped me regain my powers and some outside help, but he hasn't colluded with the Ryoka that's been running amok in the Seraite. Even so, if I can take in the girl's powers, it'll bring great benefit to Soul Society and the human world. If possible, I want to work together with her. Yamamoto asks what benefit he's referring to. The eradication of hollows and the mediation of spirits. I'll purify Hawako Mundo and I'll slightly alter the hearts of all the people in the human world. That's all. Resentment, greed, and instinct destroy the chains of the plus and they become the seeds that create hollows. I'll remove those, that's all. They also teach this in human world studies. In the human world, you have something called psychosurgery. Also known as lobotomy, a healing art where they remove parts of the brain in an attempt to heal mental illness. It has many side effects and is no longer in practice in the human world. But Azashiro felt no problem raising it as an example. I intend to do something similar along the lines of this. I'll improve part of the brains and spirits of humans in order to remove all those things which can lead to the birth of hollows. Eventually, no one will ever need to go to hell again. To everyone present, his words could easily be reworded to remaking mankind into the image he desires, in other words, total subjugation. Hirako was the first to react. Are you an idiot? Even if you did, it would take forever. Do you know how many billions of people exist? Azashiro counters that if he had the female hollow's powers, he could do it in 1 year. The blink of an eye in the life of a Shinigami. Although the captains didn't know the exact nature of this hollow's powers, they assumed based on Azashiro's words that her powers would increase Azashiro's fusion power immensely to planetary levels. Hitsugaya says it's ironic for Azashiro to borrow a hollow's power even though he hates them. Azashiro corrects him. He doesn't hate hollows. He just sees them as beings that need to be purified. Yamamoto tells him, the Soul Society and the human world are two sides of the same coin. Azashiro, your plan lacks respect towards the human world. It also lacks respect towards the justice that his predecessors in Soul Society have built up. Azashiro counters, respect is a pointless burden. The Shinigami should merely be a gear that keeps the world spinning, nothing more. Including me. Then, noticing that his explanation has been a waste of time, considering everyone disagrees with him, Azashiro heaves a sigh and disappears again, fusing into the air. 1 hour ago, Karakura Town, Subekadai, Matsukura Hospital site. Why am I alive? This thought was on the mind of the masked female Arankar, Roka Paramiya, as she stood on the roof of an abandoned hospital. Her master, Zale, had told her, don't think you have any will of your own. When you aren't useful to me, you are the same as those rocks over there. Ah, that's the perfect name for you. That's how he had named her, a spider-type Ajuchas, right before Aizen had turned her into an Arankar. She was a tool and yet she had a self. Why was she alive? Roka was the result of Shiel's experiment in which he intertwined countless souls together and artificially created a Manos Grande. Her life was supposed to end as a foil against Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi, but he had spared her. She figured Zale would end her life anyway. She felt relieved. This meant she would no longer have to think about her own existence. But Zale had gotten a new idea after watching Kuroshiki's death. He would continue to experiment on her for another 200 years. Her body would be chopped up endlessly. He eventually gave her anesthesia when he grew tired of her screams. In the end, she got a new power. The power to connect with all matter via her negation threads, and to share Raryoku and information. She felt happy to be useful to her master. But it didn't last long. After Zale perfected his own ability, Gabriel, he no longer had any interest in Roka. She had once again lost her reason for existence. In the end, she did chores and worked as a nurse for the other Arankars as Shiel's Frashin. She had met all the other Espada, but none of them had needed her either. When she worked as a nurse for Yami, he smashed her head in. She should have died. By becoming an Arankar, she had lost the hollow ability of high-speed regeneration. But what laid at the heart of her ability was backup, and external storage. Duplicating her own soul and memories, she could pull those from her body whenever something happened to revive herself. As part of his research on immortality, Zale had connected himself to her threads, constantly backing up his memories inside her. Or, to be more exact, he had dispersed information to all matter in Hawako Mundo, stones, quartz trees etc. via her body. But then he succeeded with Gabriel. He didn't need her backups anymore to resurrect himself. Even so, he didn't kill her. He let her exist as some handy memo pad. Through countless experiments, Roka had joined her soul with a large part of Hawako Mundo. When she was about to die from getting her head smashed in, the information she had dispersed in the stones, quartz trees and the palace's walls regurgitated via her threads, regenerating her body, soul and memories, and it wasn't like this ability had no limits or her immortality was on par with the likes of Aizen where she comes back right away. It took her months to reform after she'd been killed. After a long time, her broken body was reconstructed. And she knew. While she had been busy being put back together, Aizen had left Hawako Mundo and Zale had been killed by a Shinigami. Without any purpose, she wandered and wandered. She also visited Karakura Town, the town which her master and Aizen had often monitored. But she found no purpose there either. Her negation threads connected with everything around her, automatically. That's why she'd frequently join her soul with the matter of the human world, becoming faintly visible even to humans without Raken. She was empty. So empty. And then she heard her master's voice. Can you hear me, fool? She didn't know that her negation threads had kept sending information about Hawako Mundo into her while she was restoring herself. And so, she continued spinning threads, creating her master's persona in her giant network of stored information. The voice talked about needing a new body. But he wanted a suitable body. And so she returned to being Shiel's tool. Freedom meant nothing to her anyway. She wanted purpose. Back to the present Karakura town, a hero has appeared before her. She could run, but this man wasn't a Shinigami, Quincy or Hollow, the things Zale had told her to run away from. She didn't move. She didn't talk either. But the man grabbed her hand and said, "Beautiful lady, rest assured, I am your ally. Please tell me, Don Kananji, the reason behind your sad eyes." Soul Society, Research and Development Institute. Look. Toru, a female Development Institute member, shows her price in her arms to the others, one of the Pikaro. She had captured it while playing tag with Yoruichi and Kuakaku. It was asleep, under anesthesia. Wait a minute. Khan appears from under some rumble, complaining about the difference in treatment between him and the intruders. Why wasn't he captured via Toru's sweet trap? He throws himself at her, but she sends him flying. Toru asks Akon where Mayuri is. Apparently he's on minor business, as he took Nemu with him. They couldn't contact him about the captain meeting because there are no communication lines where he's heading. Somewhere inside the Garganta, Hollows use the Garganta as a pathway. And the Zale lookalike, who has created a room in that space, is staring at the corpse of Shielaporo Grants with a frown. Why can't I merge with it? Did that damn Mayuri alter my corpse in some way? I'm going to get my revenge on him for killing me and putting me in this predicament. He grabs a scalpel, ready to dissect his own corpse, when Mayuri and Nemu appear behind him. It's not nice to mangle other people's experiments. I think it's better if the dead remained that way. Sorry excuse for a scientist. My, I'll have to give you credit for being able to find me here in the Garganta. Cutting him off, Mayuri says. By the way, who are you? Mayuri's question annoys him. Who am I now? I am Shielaporo Grants, you cretin. His nemesis sighs and changes the question. Well then, what are you? Are you joking? Or have you already forgotten my name, you fool? Hundreds of thousands of years. After administering the superhuman drug to Shielaporo Grants, at least that's the time that should have passed inside him before being penetrated by my blade. Did you experience that passage of time? With a dumbfounded expression, the lookalike said, What? I took a tiny part of your reishi from your soul. I've already confirmed that your soul has passed the gates of hell. Mayuri asks him if he escaped from hell. If so, then he'd definitely like to know more. The Ryoka is in shock. It feels as if he can see a row of locked doors in the back of his brain. This can't be. It seems my guess was correct. Tell me, when did you first start thinking you were Shielaporo Grants? This can't be true. The Ryoka tries to flee via the threads, but Mayuri tells him he already cut the Ryoka off from the negation threads before entering the room. Mayuri tells him he could still run by foot, though. Mayuri won't give chase. He's not interested in him anymore, knowing that his guess was correct. You're not Shielaporo Grants. You're just a lump of reishi of incompletely duplicated memories and information. You're just a computer virus in the masked woman's web. Yes, that masked woman, that's who Mayuri is interested in now. The Ryoka is insulted. I'm below my own tool. I'm below Roka. Oh, that's her name. I'll write that on her name tag later. The Ryoka falls silent, thinks and then, accepts the facts. And when he does, a certain chain inside him is released. His Ryutsu swells up. Mayuri turns to him, but the Ryoka is already gone, leaving a giant hole in the room. Mayuri orders Nemu to measure the residual Ryutsu. The results interest him. The figure exceeds the Ryutsu of Yami Yargo, the strongest Espada with the number 0. Somewhere in the Rukongai, the Pikaro are missing one member. They can't sense him. They guess that means he's inside Saraite. Should they save him? The opinions are divided. They need to hurry up or they'll lose to Dawn. Although they now consist of more than 100 children, the Pikaro used to be one of Jutches. Long ago, there was a human community. All the caretakers had died and only the children had been left. Those children eventually died by starvation and became earthbound spirits. No Shinigami appeared to send them to the Soul Society. And so, they eventually turned into hollows. They started eating each other, and one hollow was left victorious. Having filled his empty stomach, some of his reasons returned and he realized what he had done. The hollow wandered into Hawaiko Mundo and the human world, in search for the friends he had eaten. He eventually evolved into a Manos, a Jillian and then into a Jutches. The Ajutches, having now regained intelligence to a degree, would look for other earthbound spirits of children. He'd proposed to become friends. And after they had turned into hollows, he fed them with part of his own body, believing there would be no more fighting as long as their empty stomachs were filled. Eventually these hollows also evolved into Jillians and then into Ajutches, possessing the same power as him. After becoming Shiel's experimental subjects, they were named the Picaro, a group of children type hollows. The wish of wanting friends had been granted. A garganta opens above the Picaro and the Zale lookalike appears. They greet him as Shielaporo. They realize he was the Ryutsu they had sensed when they met Roka in Hawaiko Mundo. Zale lookalike asks if half of the Picaro will play a game with him. They agree. What will they play? King's game. Treasure hunt. The man says they'll indeed look for a treasure. And they'll use the treasure to create a king. Once that's done, they'll look for Roka Paramia. He gives a sinister smile. The unrest which he had felt during his meeting with Mayuri is long gone. The Picaro don't notice how the 8 on the man's body fades. And how the number 100 appears on his left eyeball. 11th Division Barracks. The 11th Division. The division most specialized in battle. In the past, when Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi was captain, the division was seen as a group of brilliant military men and women. After Kigenju Kenpachi came on, the division got its image as a bunch of crude bandits. Nowadays there were hardly any women in their ranks, aside from Vice-Captain Kusajishi Yakiru. Yumashika has lost his Zanpakuto. But rather than looking down on him, his fellow division members were merely interested in the strong man who had managed to beat their 5th seat. Yumashika and Akaku exchange some words. Akaku understands Yumashika's frustration. Just remembering how Ichigo once healed his wounds during their fight still ticks him off. Why did Azashiro steal Kujaku? Yumashika thinks it might have to do with Kujaku's abilities. But he can't share this guess. After all, he's hiding the truth behind Kujaku's powers. But he's worried. Very worried. Outside the barracks, they hear the faint sound of bells ringing. It draws closer and Zaraki Kenpachi enters the barracks. Zaraki asks Yumashika about his fight with the Mukin escapee. Yumashika says that technically it wasn't really a fight. They didn't even cross swords. Yumashika tries to explain something about Azashiro's abilities, but Akaku stops him, telling him not to pull a face like he's about to die. Zaraki follows this up by stating that he doesn't want to know his opponent's weakness. That'd be boring. Yumashika realizes he was worried for nothing. These men want to enjoy battle. That's all. And Zaraki just wants to know one thing, is he strong? Yumashika answers, yes, very strong. The captain commander has ordered him to go to Karakura town to find a female Arankar with a skull on her face. Zaraki doesn't really understand why, but the captain commander told him he could fight to the death with this Azashiro guy once he did. And so, 3 monsters turn their eyes to Karakura town. Azashiro Kenpachi, the Zale lookalike and Zaraki Kenpachi. To find one frail, masked, female Arankar. Unbeknownst to them, Ichigo and his group were on their way to Karakura town as well. The Soul Society, Zaraki Kenpachi was heading towards the Senkaimon. Towards battle. But he's not alone. The entire 11th Division is walking behind him. As Black Sea fills the streets. Why are you lot coming? I said I'll be fine on my own, but Akaku reminds him that he can't locate Roka, an Arankar with low Ryutsu, by himself, and if they find Roka, Zaraki will be able to fight Azashiro. The 11th Division is a band of ruffians, and the civilians living near their barracks are cut from the same cloth. For example, the female owner of a local bar has no problem breaking bottles over an unruly soldier's head. Even so, she watches in awe. She has never seen the entire division depart at once. But one of her clients, an old man, has seen this scene many times before in the past. Back when Kuroyoshiki Kenpachi was still captain. The nostalgia brings a tear to his eye. But the civilians aren't the only ones watching this rare scene. Renji, vice-captain of the 6th, and Iba Tetsuziman, vice-captain of 7th, are also watching from afar, standing on a rooftop. Both of them used to belong to the 11th Division. The scene before them makes their blood itch. As Renji feels the violent and heavy Ryutsu of the man walking in front of this Black Sea, he asks himself. How the hell did Ichigo ever manage to defeat Captain Zaraki without even using his Bankai? Kuo Academy, so when is this teleportation spell going to activate? As Ichigo finished his sentence, a blinding flash of light disrupted his vision as the whole group of Rias, Akano and Ichigo were transferred almost instantaneously to a forest area. Where are we? This doesn't look anything at all like Karakura town. I don't have any time to waste. I need to get over to Karakura town now. Staring at her newly acquired mutated piece, Rias is somewhat surprised by the level of anger he was throwing their way. Calm down, Ichigo. Bucho-san told you before we teleported before that her version of the teleportation spell couldn't take her to anywhere she hasn't been before. Especially a forbidden place such as Karakura town, which is a no-devil zone, so even if Rias had been there, it was forbidden by the current 4 Mahu to go there. Ichigo, trying his best to stifle his anger, takes a deep breath. I'm sorry Rias-san for snapping at you like that, it was uncalled for, but I have to protect my friends. I'm not going to sit here on the sidelines and let anyone get hurt. Understanding, Rias forgives Ichigo rather quickly for the outburst. We are currently in the bordering town of Nakuri City, which isn't far from Karakura town. It's about 20 minutes to Karakura town if we walk from our position. Just as Rias finished her statement, a massive wave of Ryutsu came crashing down on the 3 new arrivals, making Rias and Akino shudder, as this was the same crushing feeling they both felt when Ichigo was demonstrating his Shinigami powers to everyone, but this felt more bloodthirsty and raw. Ichigo, having felt this similar Ryutsu once, shuddered at the memory of the battle with Kenpachi, and then there were 2 other signatures he had never sensed before. One was just as powerful as the one Zaraki was giving off, and the other was similar to the released state of Yami. What the hell is going on? This is a lot worse than Kazuki had mentioned. We don't have any time to lose. We got to get to Karakura town as quick as we can. Ichigo then transformed into his Shinigami form, and for the first time since he lost his powers, Ichigo's Ryutsu bathed the entire area. Kazuki, Candy Shop, Urahara and Rukia, who were about to leave to look for Orihime, felt all the Ryutsu that entered the town of Kenpachi, and 2 other people were just as monstrous. That's when they both felt the 4th Ryutsu wash over them like a sense of nostalgia. That was Kurosaki-san we just sensed now, but how did he get his Soul Reaper powers back? Because I highly doubt that Orihime gave him the sword back. Rukia smiled because she was happy one of her closest friends' powers had returned. Kazuki, if Orihime didn't give him the sword, how did Ichigo's powers return to him? The only way to find out is ask Kurosaki-san ourselves, but since that's sorted out, let's find Orihime and make sure she's okay. Somewhere else in Karakura town, Ryu was finally back on his feet when he felt all the spirit energy and Ryutsu washed over the town. After he got off the phone with Orihime, he expected something was wrong with her, as her behavioral patterns and way of speech have changed when addressing Ichigo. He made the mental note to look into that after he figured out how Ichigo got his powers back and why so many different people of captain class were in Karakura town. Execution headquarters. After sensing all the Ryutsu in one location and Ichigo's returned powers, Ginjo Kugo rushed and grabbed the sword, stabbing himself, absorbing all the Ryutsu from the various people who put their spiritual power into the blade. And after hearing the complaint from the other execution members besides Ruruka, who didn't care for getting the powers, Ginjo decided to share some of the power with all of them, enhancing all their fullbring, making them able to wear it like how Ichigo does with his sword releases. Alright Tsukishima, I think we should pay Ichigo a visit and convince him to join us in taking down the Soul Society. And if by some chance he refuses after what I have to tell him, we'll just kill him. Fine by me Ginjo, let's do it. This made Orihime, who was under the influence of Tsukishima's fullbring book of the end, have outburst with tears in her eyes to not hurt Kurosaki-kun, and that this was wrong. This shocked everyone present, as Chad, also who was under his control, said Ichigo was their friend. What the hell, Tsukishima? Are they actually breaking through the ability of your Book of the End? If that's the case, we can't afford to have a liability of them turning on us in any situation. Take them out now. That's when Tsukishima moved in back of Chad using Bringer Light and was about to take off his head. He was stopped by an orange shield that shattered on impact. Shiden Koshun, I reject, shield of 4 heavens resistance. Orihime chanted these words as a barrier surrounded her and Chad. Come on Chad, you can do it, don't let him control your mind. Kurosaki-kun is our friend, break through his power. Orihime's love and admiration for Ichigo helped her break through Tsukishima's ability, as once the mention of killing Ichigo was brought up, she was able to break through the manipulation. Ruruka attacked the barrier, which led to her getting harmed by the shield's reflecting power, but Orihime started to raise her Ryutsu in order to alert Ryu, Ichigo's and the others on her location. She knew the moment they started attacking in earnest, she would be able to stop them, especially with Chad trying to fight off Tsukishima's powers. That's when the shield broke instantly. Enough of these games. As Ginjo brought his sword over his head from behind, about to cleave her into it, when he heard a whirring sound in a loud voice. Getsuga Tensho. As a massive wave of spiritual energy and arrows came barreling into building, making them have to dodge and back off as Ichigo blast destroyed the surrounding forest and cleared the sky of clouds, as it was apparent as his powers are back and he was stronger than the version of himself before he trained in the Dongai, just in new Shikai state. The current Shikai Ichigo in the story is stronger than his Holofication Bankai before he trained in the Dongai to beat Aizen, so you finally show Kurosaki. I was starting to think you were a coward. Ichigo was floating in the air, and to the right of both sides of him were two girls with figures similar to Orihime, one with red hair and another with black, and both of them had wings sprouting from their back. It doesn't matter who you bring along, if you stand against me I'll crush you all. I think you've forgotten about me. I want payback for that surprise attack you gave me last time. As Ryu was making sure he wasn't about to be ignored by the people there. Glad to see your powers are back, Kurosaki. Oh Ryu, when you get there I didn't even notice you. As he said this to piss off Ryu and get a rise out of him as usual. Ryu in his usual fashion starts shouting at Ichigo, angry at his lack of awareness, just as Ginjo fired a purplish and black energy wave at Ryu, in which he used Harenkyaku to get out of the way. You guys are going to have a big problem if you don't start focusing on me. As he finished his statement, both Urahara and Rukia both arrived on the scene as Kazuki used flash steps to get Orihime and Chad limp body out the way. My Kurosaki-san, I didn't know you came back with two girlfriends. This proceeded to make Ichigo and Rias turn red while Akeno turned red. It's not like that, you dumbass. These are the two people I met over there and the reason I was able to get my Soul Reaper powers back. This made Kazuki curious, but he put that aside due to more pressing matters like the enemies in front of them who were getting annoyed. Ichigo, me and Akeno will take the guy in the white shirt, so leave that to us. And I'll take Orihime and Chad somewhere safe. Don't worry about the small fry, Ichigo and Rukia will handle these guys, you focus on and take him down. Ginjo starts to laugh. You really think that it will be that easy to take me down, especially after I absorbed the sword that was going to be used to take you down? As Ginjo charged at Ichigo, who was taken aback to his speed and was sent flying out the area due to the strike he delivered. Ichigo then notes that this guy is going to be trouble as Ginjo uses Bringer Light mixed with a Sonito to get behind Ichigo and fire a Sero at him, in which Ichigo pivots in midair and fires a Getsuga Tensho right back at it, cancelling out the attack. That's good, it would have been boring if that was all it took to take you down. As Ginjo and the substitute Shinigami were currently clashing blades. If you're worried about this being boring, let me spice it up a bit for you. Ichigo then raises his Ryutsu and slashes Ginjo in the abdomen, making him bleed and knocking him back a couple 100 feet. Rias and Akeno versus Tsukishima. Baku-san, what do you think his abilities are? I'm not sure, we virtually have no intel on him other than he's strong, but at the same time he doesn't know what we're capable of as well. This causes Tsukishima to smirk. I wonder about that. Explain yourself. What are you referring to? Do you know something we don't? You'll see soon enough when you both lie dead at my feet. This unnerves the two devils quite a bit as he knows more than he's letting on. Akeno then makes the first move, going on the offensive. Demonic Flame. Akeno sent out multiple raining fireballs out of the sky at Tsukishima, in which he started dodge with the use of Bringer Light with ease. At first he was surprised to see a weird-shaped circle appear and shoot fire at him, but he got over that quickly when he realized how slow it was. Aqua Ball. Akeno created a second magical circle in which it shot out water, which was as slow as the fireballs. Tsukishima was at first going to toy with her, but he started to get bored with her abilities and was about to go on the offensive until both attacks collided with one another, creating steam shrouding the entire area. Damn, so it was just a diversion. I must admit it was a pretty impressive tactic, but it's not very original as I can sense Ryutsu. But for him, not knowing they weren't using spiritual energy caught him off guard as he was able to sense anyone's presence in the cloud of steam. That's when he narrowly dodged a fireball at the last second, aiming for his head. Both the speed and power of her technique drastically increased. This will be bad if I get pummeled by her attacks. I have to get out of this cloud of steam. Just as he tried to leave the cloud of steam, he heard her yell, "Thunder Cage," and before he knew it, he leapt into the walls of her attack and was shocked with 1,000,000 volts of lighting. Meanwhile, while Akeno was on the offensive, Rias started to gather a lot of destruction energy, enough to take him out in one shot. I can move my body properly, this must be some form of paralysis. Fire Demon Avalanche. Thousands of purplish fireballs shaped like dragons started raining down in all directions at Tsukishima. He noticed he's moving at least 4x slower after getting hit with her lightning cage attack, as he was barely able to dodge the fireballs raining down on him from above until a few of them hit him, causing a miniature explosion on impact as this knocked him off balance. All he can do at this point is try to block the incoming attacks and minimize the amount of damage he is taking. Despite all the attacks I threw at him, he still isn't going down. I can't keep this pace up forever. I only managed to use the move once during training. I hope this doesn't fail now. Holy Lightning Asian Dragon. A giant dragon shaped in holy lightning came down from the sky and struck the lightning cage and the person inside. There was a massive explosion from the attack as Akeno was moaning from the damage she just caused. As the explosion settled, Rias, now fully charged up, launched her attack. Destruction Ball. Rias launched the ball of energy right after the Akeno attack as the explosion started to disintegrate the area which it hit. It doesn't matter what his abilities are, he shouldn't have survived after that. I thought the same thing about how I am still alive after that. If there is one thing I regret, it's that I underestimated you too. As the smoke cleared, Tsukishima was standing there with third-degree burns similar to Ichigo's arm after Aizen used his Fragger ability on him all over the left side of his face and torso while missing his left arm. To say he was pissed was an understatement, but he still kept a level head in assessing what to do next. Akeno started taunting him, having only one arm, knowing full well she was practically out of magic power and Rias was low as well. Being able to assess energy, Akeno was able to discern that Tsukishima wasn't doing that much better than both of them himself. Using Bringer Light, he closes the gap on Akeno as he's able to cut her just before she was able to dodge, and having inserting himself into her pass, he now knew all their moves and abilities they had up theirselves and how to neutralize them. Akeno, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay, Rias. It was just a nick, although I don't see bleeding, let alone a cut. Laughing, Tsukishima tells her, I already got you under the effects of my ability book of the end. Well, since you got us under your ability, it wouldn't hurt to explain it. I'm under no obligation to tell you, but since your fates are sealed, I'll let you in on its ability. The book of the end has the ability to split the past of whomever it cuts. This ability works not by manipulating time and memories, but by literally inserting my very own presence into the victim's history. The victims of this power recognize me as someone closely connected to their personal lives, whether it is as family, friend, or lover. I can even usurp the roles of other individuals in the victims' histories. Likewise, I also gain comprehensive knowledge of whoever I cut memories. This power takes hold regardless of whether the victim trusted me before being cut. I can also continue to modify my victims' histories even after cutting them. Book of the End's power also works on inanimate objects. For example, by cutting the ground, I can modify its history to alter its structure and set traps there as though he had done so long ago. By cutting a person's weapon, I can gain complete knowledge of its techniques, including their weaknesses. In other words, you lost because although I cut one of you, you two share every secret, so I know all of your abilities as well even if I can't neutralize them. I'm sorry, Buoku-san, he now knows all your abilities because I got cut. It's not your fault, Akeno. We couldn't have known what his powers were. But still, this fight is far from over. Just because he knows our power doesn't mean he can stop them, and besides, he's in worse shape than both of us. Before Rias could finish her sentence, he used Bringer Light to get behind her and slash her on the back, making Rias scream out in pain. I hope you don't think this will be a quick death. I plan to savor every moment of the pain I'm about to inflict upon you both. Seeing Rias on her knees from the last attack, Tsukishima kicks her in the face, sending her flying into the forest, breaking dozens of trees before slamming into a rock. Akeno, trying her best to summon lighting, is out of magic power, so nothing ends up coming out as Tsukishima is using his Bringer Light to teleport all around her, slicing her up pretty good with her clothes tattered and bleeding from all over. Akeno smiles at the pain. You know those masochistic tendencies you have are going to be the death of you. What a sad life you lived, Akeno. It would be best if I put you out of your misery. After all, you can finally see your pathetic excuse for your mother when I send you up to meet her. See, you didn't live up to expectations the Grimoire clan set forth as your sorry self let Rias die. Now you can pass on knowing you couldn't save your friend. These words struck deep and put Akeno in a state of despair as she was no longer able to function after the repressed memories of her mother's death started popping up, and Tsukishima's power amplified the experience, making it worse than what it was. Just as Akeno lay on the floor cut up and bleeding, Tsukishima readied his blade to cut off her head. Farewell, you fallen angel. Right before he could chop her head, he heard Rias yell destruction bullet. He tried use Bringer Light, but her technique was so fast he couldn't dodge it in his weakened state as blast went through his chest where his heart was. As he dropped his sword, all he could say was damn. I thought I caved your head in with that last kick. How are you still alive? I'm a lot tougher than I look, and the reason why you lost is because you underestimated the both of us. If you took this fight seriously from the beginning instead of toying around with us, you would have won. But this ends here. Destruction bullet. Rias fired at point blank at Tsukishima's head, leaving a gaping hole in his head the size of a softball as he dropped to the ground dead, and she soon collapsed to the ground, now unconscious due to her injuries. Hundreds of years ago, in a certain country, there were two brothers. The older brother was a general and the younger brother was an alchemist. They lived very different lives, but possessed the same. Older brother would take his prisoners of war to his younger brother's lab. The younger brother would commit inhumane experiments on them. Eventually, the bitter souls of his victims in his basement gave birth to a monster, a hollow. The monster waited until both brothers were in the lab and killed them. It wanted to torment them and eat them. But the younger brother let out an insane laugh as he looked down at his own corpse and at the monster before him, saying, "This is exactly what I wanted." The younger brother approached his older brother's soul and took a bite out of his neck. He kept eating with a victorious smile on his face, as if he wanted to say he knew exactly how hollows worked. And yes, the chain on his chest broke and a hole grew in his chest. The monster, realizing the horror unfolding before him, tried to flee, but the hollow-feet brother ate him too. He never stopped laughing as he did. A day passed, and as he looked at his grotesque hands, he whispered, "I see. The perfect existence, which I'm looking for, lies beyond this." In the past, there was a Manos Grande. His name was Shielaporo Grants. After eating countless hollows, he had turned into a vasto lord. He was feared by many. He was usually a calm scientist, performing all kinds of experiments, such as creating artificial ajuches. He hardly ever fought, because once he entered battle mode, he'd lose control of his own powers and kill his opponents. He wanted them alive for his experiments. Eventually he was employed as a scientist under King Baragan and served him. When the new, more powerful King Aizen appeared, he was chosen to become one of the Espada. He was bestowed with the number given to the strongest Espada, 0. But only when he ran wild in battle in his released form. He held a different number in his scientist role. But Zale wasn't satisfied with this existence. He didn't want power or ranking. He wanted the perfect being, and he desired to achieve that outcome. After countless experiments, he came to the conclusion that he couldn't achieve Gabriel in his current humanoid form. He had to devolve back to Ajuches and then evolve once more. In his opinion, the part of him which lost control during battle was a burden, as he wasn't able to control that power, as he was no different than a mindless beast. That's why, having devolved back to Ajuches, he split himself in two. He isolated and separated the swordsman part inside him, of which his brother's soul, the first soul he had eaten, had been the foundation. This meant he lost the vast majority of his power. He was then removed from the Espada. But Zale continued his experiments and eventually perfected the power of Gabriel. He was eventually allowed back into the Espada, relying solely on his power as researcher this time, and was granted the number 8 that we all know of. His brother, now an ox-type Ajuches, wandered Hueco Mundo and joined a group of other Ajuches. A strong panther-type Ajuches joined them, and they eventually served under Aizen. Zale didn't feel anything towards his older brother. His brother was a piece of thrown-out trash in his eyes. He didn't care about raw power either. Having gained the power of rebirth Gabriel, Zale was confident that he had attained the perfect being. Even so, in the end, he lost to a Shinigami and went to hell. That's how Shielaporo Grants' story ended. But the story of the Arankar who mirrors his appearance is just the beginning. Present time, somewhere in Hueco Mundo, the Zale lookalike remembers his past. Yes, it's true, he's a mere duplicate. But his memory was clear, maybe even better than the memory of the real Zale. The backup system, which had created him, contained memories which the real Zale may have forgotten over time. Most importantly, it contained memories of the time before Zale had split himself in two. Of the time when Zale had possessed tremendous power, exceeded the likes of Ulquiorra's second release in Yami. As most people thought otherwise, the real fact was that combining two Arankars doesn't mean the power merely gets multiplied by 2. No, it can act like a key to open the door to enormous power. Like Stark and Lilinet. Like Zale and his brother. He thinks Zale was foolish to give up such power. And, if he's a mere copy, then there's no need to remain chained down by the thought of being Zale. He's his own person now. He's someone who wants to regain Shiel's original power. He releases a Sero. The Picaro are impressed, they think he released a Gran Ray Sero. He corrects them. It was a normal Sero, and it was only 30% of what the real Zale could have released in his golden age. What's the real Zale? His words confuse all of the Picaro. If he's not Zale, then who is he? From now on I'll be known as Cian. Half of the Picaro will look for Roka. The other half will help me look for treasure. Cian surmises that he can regain his full power if he recollects the parts which Zale had thrown away all over Hueco Mundo after splitting himself in two. What will I do once I have regained my full strength? Become the next king of the Hollows. Take revenge on Soul Society. These thoughts, which would have sounded like a waste of time to Zale, sound good to Cian's ears. But his first priority is to break Roka to the point that she can no longer regenerate herself. He needs her thread system to infiltrate Soul Society in hell. He'll destroy her and take the system out of her. Yes, he could just give her the order. She still listened to him, but for how long? Mayuri has cut me off from the negation threads, my backup system. Without it, my reishi is slowly crumbling. At this rate, I'll eventually turn to dust. But that's no problem. All I have to do is simply eat. I'll survive as long as I take in more reishi than I lose. I theoretically could reconnect to Roka's threads and live on as part of her. But that would be an insult. To be left alive by someone beneath me. By a tool. Cian looks at the palm of his hand, seeing reishi slowly detaching itself from it. Releasing his powers like the Sero just now accelerates the crumbling process. But there's no need to stress. His emergency food is right in front of him, the Picaro. Soul Society, the captain meeting was over. Komamura asks Kyoraka why Azashiro revolted against Soul Society. Yes, he has dangerous ideas, but he doesn't seem like a villain. Azashiro revolted for the sake of justice. But what benefits the justice of Soul Society and the human world doesn't necessarily benefit Seraite and the Rukongai. Everyone has their own definition of justice. You know this, don't you? Komamura remembers the face of his old friend at Kyoraku's words. 249 years ago, the Soul Society, in front of White Road Gate, Jidanbu tries to stop Azashiro from passing his gate. But he's not trying to keep him out of Seraite. He's trying to prevent him from leaving it. Jidanbu lowers his axe again and again. Azashiro simply passes behind him. Jidanbu thinks he has turned Azashiro to dust, but Yukitake and Kyoraka are waiting for him outside the gate. It turns out Azashiro had suggested the idea to use his powers to alter Rukongai citizens into strong soldiers. Those soldiers would then be used to invade Hueco Mundo. Central 46 had laughed at the ridiculousness of his plans. They authorized it. Give it a go. If you can. But Azashiro actually succeeded in modifying the souls of a few criminals. Seeing these soldiers, who pledged loyalty to Azashiro, Central 46 quickly changed its attitude, probably fearful of their own position. Central 46 hid the fact that they had authorized the plan. Instead, they accused Azashiro of altering the souls of criminals without permission. He was then branded a criminal. Azashiro had simply stated that he would continue his plans without Central 46's permission and walked away, as if he was going on a simple stroll. Yukitake and Kyoraka try to persuade Azashiro to stop his plan. Azashiro, on the other hand, tries to persuade them of the righteousness of his plan. Neither side manages to persuade the other. Azashiro takes a step forward and Yukitake and Kyoraka release their shikai. Azashiro starts to chant Aikido, but stops halfway. He turns his head back to Seraite, whispering, I see. Even the Soul King rejects my plans. Azashiro says he'll surrender and undergo Central's 46 trials. The trio heads back into Seraite, passing by Jidanbu, who is surprised to see Azashiro still alive, a twin. Question mark quote closing parenthesis dot. Back in Seraite, they're greeted by the sight of several hundred fallen Shinigami. There are several captains amongst them. They were all defeated by Azashiro. They're still alive. Azashiro only regrets that the Silver Dragonfly's shop assistant got injured during the scuffle. He says he'll pay them back the expenses eventually. Azashiro is sentenced to 19,500 years in the Muken. Azashiro's idea to improve souls would eventually be taken up by Yushima Aoko. This man pressed forward with the research of mod souls and Spearhead, but the program was frozen by Central 46. In the end, one of the mod souls would escape and meet a certain Shinigami agent in Karakura town. Present time 1st Division Barracks. Komamura asks Kyoraka, why did Azashiro let himself be arrested so easily? If he was so elusive, couldn't he have just escaped? The 0 Division. They had arrived when Azashiro had turned his eyes away from me and Yukitake and towards Seraite. He must have concluded that although he could take on the Gote 13, taking on the 0 Division would be a pointless action. He didn't think he could win. After his explanation, Kyoraka asks himself in his thoughts, so as not to be heard by Izashiro, why Izashiro didn't simply merge with the Rukongai to escape. Is there a limit to his powers? 2 hours ago, before Ichigo returned to Karakura town, Roka is surprised at Don's sudden appearance. Don introduces himself and asks whether he can help her. She's not sure what to do and tries to ask her master Zale for orders. But she can't reach him. Her thread is being cut off by something. Roka had no way of knowing that this was Mayuri's doing, of course. She feels lost without Zale. Her master at least gave her meaning as a tool. What should she live for now? She tells Don that she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know what she wants to do. That's why she can't request him to help her with something either. She's about to thank him for caring and disappear, but Don grabs her hand and tells her, "Fear not, lady. Wandering spirits like yourself often lose their memories of their previous life. You should simply experience different things to discover what you want to do." Roka wants to correct him that she's not a plus, but his confident smile makes her lose her words. Don says, "I'll help you find yourself. If you don't know your inner self, then try a change of pace via your outer self, a new outfit." Karakura town, before Karakura Honcho train station, a high-class boutique. Don and Roka enter a boutique where Don often buys his clothes. The flamboyant shop owner helps Roka pick out a new outfit. As Don and the owner exchange small talk, Roka realizes this is the first time that she's being treated as a woman instead of as a tool. Don drives her around the city, in hope that seeing new things will help her remember herself. At the same time, Don's recording set. The producer of Don Kananji's program is getting ready for shooting. One of his staff members comes up to him. The staff member saw Don driving just now when he went to get a coffee. There was a woman beside Don in the car, the mystery masked woman. Don already found her. The producer tells his staff to get the bus ready. It's showtime. Don bought Roka some ice cream. She takes a bite, but remains silent. Don asks if she dislikes it. She reassures him that the ice cream is fun as she doesn't know what this sensation is. He laughs and corrects her. "You're supposed to say tasty." Roka realizes this is how tasty feels. She never needed to eat. In the past, Zale would force reishi into her, and nowadays she replenishes herself with reishi by automatically connecting to her surroundings with her threads. She never ate spirits like other hollows. And although strong hollows with a degree of intelligence like the Espada would sometimes eat like humans on special occasions, it had never even occurred to Roka to eat something in the human world. She's learning all kinds of new things. She's learning what it means to have fun. At the same time, Karakura town, Mashiba Ishida senses an Arankar as he's heading back home after his visit to Sunflower Sewing after leaving the hospital. It's the masked woman. He has sensed her presence countless times before over the last couple of weeks, but never managed to get to her in time. Even so, he can't ignore it. This might be related to the 100 Arankars which appeared the other night. He senses that she's traveling faster than usual. And there's a human beside her. The human's Ryutsu feels faintly similar somehow. He rushes to their location and is surprised to see Don Kananji driving with an Arankar in the passenger seat. Meanwhile, in the car, Roka feels guilty. Don thinks she's simply a wandering soul, she's deceiving him. She's thankful to him, but decides to disappear again, lest she'll get him into trouble. But she suddenly freezes. She feels someone eating away at part of her threads that are connected to Seraite. There is something following her threads and getting closer to her. She can't sense what, but it unsettles her deeply. It feels as if an unknown being is crawling up her body. What should I do? I mustn't get Don involved. She hears a voice just as she's getting ready to fade again. Found you. It's the headphoned Picaro. He's standing on top of the traffic lights, which Don's car was waiting for. Hey, will you play with us now? Present time Karakura town. The 11th division is in the world of the living, searching for Izashiro. Zaraki thinks they're going too slow. Yumashika senses a mysterious Ryutsu. He notices it earlier than the others, because he's been face to face with this Ryutsu before. It's Izashiro. He's standing behind those trees over there. The seated officers look on silently, but the more than 200 lower-ranking soldiers are angry to see Izashiro wearing a Haori imposter. Zaraki quietly whispers at them to shut up. They immediately fall silent, silenced by his Ryutsu, more so than his words. Izashiro and Zaraki exchange names. Zaraki says he'll cut down Izashiro at least once. Even if he turns out to be weak. Because he might lose the name, Kenpachi, otherwise. Azashiro surmises Yamamoto ordered the entire division to accompany Zaraki in order to reenact the Kenpachi ceremony. Whoever beats the current Kenpachi in front of 200 men will become the next Kenpachi. Yumashika wonders why Azashiro bothers to face them like this. If he can fuse with anything, he could just fuse with the air in the world of the living and kill them, right? Is there a limit to his powers and what he can do? Yakiru jumps off Zaraki's shoulder, wishing him good luck. But a hindrance appears before the duel can begin. The Pikaro Akaku yells at them for their horrible timing. Some of the Pikaro recognize him as the bald demon they saw before. Another voice corrects them. Akaku isn't a bald demon, he's Sururin. It's Yakiru. She's happily mingling with the Pikaro, much to Ikaku's anger. Yakiru tells the Pikaro to stay out of Zaraki's fight. If they do, Yakiru will play with them afterwards. The Pikaro comply. Akaku tells them to just return to Hawako Mundo already. Suddenly a blade grows out of the throat of one of the Pikaro, piercing its throat. It collapses. Azashiro scolds Akaku for giving an Arankar the chance to flee. He hasn't moved, but it's obvious the blade was Azashiro's doing. Zaraki asks him, what's the point of killing a weak brat? It won't even serve as a warm-up. Azashiro counters that Shinigami should only focus on killing hollows as effectively as possible. There's no need for fun or pride. Suddenly more and more Pikaro collapses as he talks. Zaraki then swings his Zanpakuto at Azashiro, to show him who his real opponent is. The force of his attack creates a violent gust of Ryutsu, raging through the area, blowing most of the forest away and towards the Senkaimon gate that was still open that leads to the Soul Society. Zaraki's attack doesn't harm Azashiro. It does damage the gate behind him, though. Meanwhile, the Pikaro continue to fall one by one. Aramaki tells them to run away. They may be hollows, but seeing a bunch of children being massacred doesn't sit well with him. But one of the Pikaro simply asks him who's attacking them. Aramaki answers. The Pikaro all turn their eyes to Azashiro with a smile. That means, that man will play with us, right? Azashiro tells the men that he'll give them one last chance to flee. None of them move. He sighs. He turns to Zaraki. Will you just give up? Zaraki simply says that, if you can really turn into air, then I'll just cut the air. That would be interesting. Azashiro realizes there's no reasoning with them. He closes his eyes and starts chanting Aikido. One of the collapsed Pikaro gets back up. Much to Ikaku's surprise. Suddenly, they hear different Kido chants coming from all directions. Dozens of them. Mouths to chant and arms to form seals grow out of the walls, ceiling and floor of the Dongai. Azashiro merged several hundreds of Gigai from the Development Institute with this space of the world of the living. Under Azashiro's command, the group of mouths and arms chant Kido after Kido. Hundreds of Kido spells assault the 11th division at once. The gate leading to the Soul Society cracks under the pressure, pouring an enormous gust of